That's me. So I'm doing a book report today. This is the first chapter of Ernest Holmes' book, The Science of Mind. And it's called The Thing Itself. And it has, 20 brilliant original ideas in it, in 30 pages. It's absolutely chock-a-block with wisdom. And so my task today is try to fit that into 20 minutes or so. Oh, difficult. So Ernest wrote The Science of Mind in 1938. Ernest Holmes did. And that was the year of my birth. He wrote this book specifically because he knew that I would need help. He knew that. So I wrote this book, and then I think it was 1990, I walked into the Center for Spiritual Living in Lafayette, California, and I found the truth. And I felt at home. And what I found that absolutely explained life to me for the first time were these ideas. And they're fascinating. So, chapter 1 of this book, The Thing Itself, is primarily about metaphysical philosophy and spiritual psychology, which, by the way, this is the first and only time I ever heard that concept brought forth, that we are interested in spiritual psychology. The most important aspect of New Thought philosophy is the way our minds work, and that's the science of psychology. So when you look at the title, The Science of Mind, the science of mind actually is the dictionary definition of the word psychology. That's what it says. If you look it up, psychology is the science of mind. Fascinating. Okay, so I was staggered when I first read this chapter, and I'm staggered today to read it again. Fascinating. Ernest Holmes kicks off his book by examining freedom and power. He says they are both required at the same time in order for an individual to exist in a happy state. He says, to suppose that the creative intelligence of the universe would create humanity in bondage and leave them bound would be to dishonor the creative power which we call God. In other words, Ernest couldn't find it in his own heart to believe that God would not want us to be free. God wants us to be free. And the use of these principles that are outlined in this chapter is what sets us free. So he then states that the inherent nature of all humanity is forever seeking to express itself in terms of freedom. He states that the study of science of mind is the study of first cause, which is mind, right? Spirit, that invisible essence from which everything comes, the power back of all creation, the thing itself. The thing itself. So when you read this book, The Thing Itself, I always looked at that and I thought, the thing? No. The thing is the power of mind. The creative mind of spirit that is back of everything, that everything is made up of, everything is part of. You cannot be separate from the thing itself. You are the thing itself. So our job, my job, your job, is to accept this thing and to utilize it to create a better life. And what's the point if we're not doing something positive in our lives with it? Let's create a better life. Is that not what we would all like? Upward, better. Why not? I mean, given the opportunity to either do it wrong or do it right, what choice is there, right? So we have a conscious mind, as Ernest says, that operates within a subjective field, which is creative. The conscious mind is spirit. The subjective mind is law. One is a complement of the other, and no real individuality can be expressed without a combination of them both. So that's another brand new concept that I had never run into anywhere, which says that your consciousness is going to input into a function of spirit, which will automatically create your life. It's not like you can choose to have it create your life or not choose to have it create your life. It automatically creates your life. It's an inherent function of the universe that what you think, feel, and believe becomes your experience of life. It's a brilliant idea. And when I ran into that, I thought, whoa, for the first time in my life, things made sense. How my life had unfolded, the way things had gone. Over and over and over again, I could see, as I looked back through my life, how my consciousness, how the decisions I'd made, the way I felt, had outpictured as what I experienced over and over and over again. And you can do that. It's not a bad exercise. Go back through your past and look at each thing and see how your consciousness, how the way you believed, felt, how that has moved yourself into what you're experiencing today. Okay, so Holmes brings another fascinating idea. He says, let us approach the science of mind, the science of spiritual psychology, with awe. So for the first time in your life, consider that what you think, what is really important to you on a spiritual level, is what you think, feel, and believe. The Bible puts it this way: it is done unto you as you believe. And boy, is that the truth. It is done unto us. In other words, the law creates what we believe over and over and over again. So our primary concern as spiritual psychologists, you can now think of yourself as a spiritual psychologist, okay? Consciousness, what are we thinking? What am I thinking consciously or unconsciously into that law we talked about? I'm thinking consciously or unconsciously. So he then goes on to the idea that the existence of God or spiritual law never needs to be proven. That's another idea I'd never run across before. I always wanted to prove God existed or God did not exist. And Ernest said, there can be no reason given as to why the truth is true. You can have no intellectual reason why the truth is true. We do not create law and principle. We only discover it. So that's what you're going to do in your life. You're going to discover the principles of the universe, utilize them in your life to create a better existence, more fruitful, more exciting, more interesting, more dramatic, more bigger, grander. Because remember, you are cause. In your life, you are cause. Can you accept that? That you're the cause in your life? That's a big difference between the way we normally walk around thinking things are happening to us all the time, huh? To start to think that we are actually the thing that's doing the happening, not the thing that is being happened to. So this is what happened to me the first time I walked into the Science Mind Center. I fell into the truth of these laws and principles and have made use of them in my life so far. So in my copy of this book, by the way, this is the copy I've owned since those days, I had pasted in a small article from a sports magazine that Tiger Woods was quoted. And I think it fits right here. Tiger says, Tiger finally won with a birdie putt on the next hole by dropping a putt only he thought he could fake. 40 feet down the hill into the green with a 2.5-foot break. And here's what he said. If you believe in something so hard, for some reason, it only happens when you're in a crunch, when all the pressure is there, Wood said. If you truly believe you can make the putt, you make the stroke, and the ball will go in. Good summation, huh? You make the stroke, the ball will go in. You think the thought, the thing will occur. Over and over and over again, it's proven to us. And he knew, Tiger knew that instinctively. So my work at any point in my own spiritual journey has been to recognize the connection between my current life experience and how I got there, okay? How was I able to sink that critical putt? How was I able to do this? And as I look backward in my life, I realized that many times, long before I ever even knew about this philosophy, that I had set intents and they had worked out in my life. So I'm going to relate to you one of those. Back in 1984, this, by the way, is a copy of a letter I wrote to myself in 1984. Now, in 1984, I was working for Bank of America. I was international banker, but I was getting tired of it. And Brigida and I had just bought our property in Solitude. And we were thinking together that we would like a different kind of life. And so here's what I wrote. D'Amato's plan. George and Brigida D'Amato have as the purpose of this plan to achieve financial independence, living in the country here in the Anderson Valley by January 1986. In order to achieve this, they will develop their own business, retire from working for others, and set up a beautiful, self-sufficient life. They will earn from their farm and business together in partnership and love so that they spend their valuable hours working only for and with each other. Did that all come true?
Yes.
Every bit of it. I put this away. I never looked at it again, I think, after I wrote it. I only stumbled across it looking through old papers long after all of these things had come true. And I realized, oh my God, that just proves exactly what I'm talking about. I had that intent. That was my mental atmosphere. That's what I wanted, believed could happen. And there it was. It happened. Regina and I became therapists, group therapists. The property we bought up in Philo became the perfect place to have groups of people come, and they came from all over the world. And we lived a fascinating and interesting, self-sufficient, financially viable life in the country. It was perfect. I just think that that story kind of really illustrates exactly how this process and how these ideas have operated in my life. And I'm hoping that when you look at your life, you can see the same kind of progress and process and newness. So Ernest then goes on to the idea that the existence of God, oh, excuse me, I read that already. I can't fully embrace the power of my mind, my thinking, my thoughts, and my beliefs if I have a passive relationship with thinking. Understand what I mean by that? If you're just letting your thinking happen, you can't really embrace the power of your thinking. You have to be thinking consciously, and you want to be examining your thinking from a conscious basis. And why is that? Because 80% of the decisions that go through our mind on a daily basis are not conscious thought. Not conscious thought. That means a lot of our mental atmosphere, a lot of what we're putting into that law that we were talking about, a lot of that is old ideas, old feelings, old beliefs. And some of those old ideas, old feelings, old beliefs might be good, but some of them also might be getting in the way of your progress. And so, as much as possible, you want to become aware. You're spiritual psychologists now, right? I have adorned you and anointed you spiritual psychologists. So from now on, you're going to pay attention to what's going on inside your own heart and mind. When you find yourself disliking someone else or some other thing, or being tremendously upset, not being at peace, when you find yourself in those kinds of distress situations, you want to examine your thinking. What's going on? Why am I distressed? Why am I the way I am? And when you find the spiritual answer behind your psychological distress, Brigitte said it while they were doing their meditation today. She said that, goodness gracious, I can't quote her. That's horrible. I can't quote her. But basically what I'm trying to say is that your mind, when it focuses on things unconsciously, we call that habitual thinking. And habitual thinking is, well, as Henry Van Dyke put it, we create our life thought by thought, but know it not. We don't want to know it not. We want to know it, not. So it's wise then to stay present to what I'm thinking. I must come to grips with my mind, both its conscious and unconscious tendencies, and see how I can move myself intentionally designing an experience that is good for me. So every morning, my wife and I get up and we check in how we're feeling, what's going on emotionally, what's going on spiritually. And we set a tone for the day. We set an intent. We talk about how healthy we want to be, how vibrantly alive we want to be, what kind of a relationship we want to have. I talk about wealth. I thank the universe for what I am given and invite more in. Why not? The Course in Miracles says that in God, there is no order of magnitude in miracles. You know what that means? It means for God, there's no big ones or small ones. To God, all miracles are exactly the same size. They're a thought away, right? Because thought is cause. So why not think big? Why not? The biggest thing you can think of. Okay, I'll tell you something. The day I found Science of Mind, I had X amount of money. I have 20 times that much money today. 20 times. Why? Because I have accepted that the universe is abundant and wants to give to me, And it has, over and over and over again. This is the basic message of the first chapter of Ernest Holmes' book. And by the way, I have written at least one speech, sometimes 3 or 4, on every good idea in this first chapter. I've been giving speeches. I think I gave my first speech, Science of Mind speech, right here in front of this thing 25 years ago. Long time, huh? And every time I give a speech, I get to learn something. You think I do it for you. No, I do it for me. What does it say? The teacher teaches what he needs to learn. So every time I re-explain something, I'm re-explaining it to me. I'm building up my own consciousness, my own strength, my own ability. So the law is always at work, responding to our thoughts, beliefs, and intentions, whether we're aware of it or not. So then the question becomes, how are we using that law in our lives? Am I engaging with it consciously, with clear intention and purpose, or am I reacting? The thing itself is not something separate from me. It is me. And the question remains, how deeply am I aware of this truth? How deeply are you personally aware that you are the expression of God, that you are the cause in your own life? Because these questions form a foundation for a totally different way of living, of being, that is unlike anything else in the world, unlike it. Everybody else, unfortunately, has a tendency to believe that life happens to them. When something is happening to you, you might have almost always will certainly have the belief that you are on the receiving end of what's going on and not in charge of it. But when you embrace these ideas, you're on the causing end. And now you have one thing you never had before: freedom. Freedom from bondage, strength, power, selfhood. Magnificent ideas.
No longer a victim.
So Ernest says, we are chemists in the laboratory of the infinite. What then shall we create? So you're not only spiritual psychologists today, you're also chemists. You are the chemists in the laboratory of life. See what you can create. I'm fully embracing the creative power that resides within me. Are you doing that? Or are you still seeing yourself as separate from the divine principle? No matter what has happened in the past, in this moment, we have the power to change anything. One of my favorite philosophers, Thomas Troward, put it this way. He said, the past is not precedent. Whatever has happened only has the bearing on the future that you give it. If you want to change any given thing in your life, that's in your power, because you are cause. Wow. So no matter what's happened in the past, we have the power to design what we want in our future. So the question then arises, what do I believe God's nature to be? Since I am God, I have the nature and quality of God within me. What do I believe that nature to be? Do I believe that God is kind, creative, loving, receptive? Or do I perceive God as unkind, judgmental, punishing. Probably the single most important aspect of mind, as you are now spiritual psychologists, is to know what you believe about God. That's the number one. Everybody has to start there. What do you believe about God? Because that belief is going to shape your experience of life like no other belief you have. Completely can warp your experience if you believe God dislikes you or wants to punish you. Or if you think you have to earn God's love. Ooh, is that difficult? You have to earn God. No. You're loved. It's a given. So the challenge here is profound. Whatever I believe to be true about God's nature will be reflected in my own life. My beliefs shape my reality, and therefore I must choose wisely. I believe in a loving, creative, compassionate God, and I align myself with those qualities. Those are the nature of God. That's my love. That's my nature. I am loving, kind, compassionate, caring. Can you feel that in yourself? That you are, in fact, the love of God. Compassionate, kind, caring. Love you guys. So his next great idea is this. If you learn to trust in the thing itself, right? That will make you happy. I like that idea. Lots of us have had difficulty managing to be happy. But if you learn to trust in this idea of a creative, loving, compassionate God that you are the expression of, when you learn to believe that, it makes you happy. Anyway, if you learn to do that and it doesn't make you happy, I want you to come to me. We're going to have a chat about it. Okay. So the entire problem, according to Ernest Holmes, is that limitation, suffering, and uncertainty is not God ordained, but is the result of ignorance. So the ignorance is the ignorance of the power of thought, the ignorance of the existence of spiritual psychology, the ignorance of the existence of spiritual law, the ignorance of the truth that it's done unto us as we believe. When we know the truth shall set us free. Now, aren't you just a lot happier knowing all this? Good. Thank you.